In September of 1950, the momentum was shifting dramatically in favor of the United Nations. The Eighth Army was pushing northward at a pace that recalled Patton's drive across France after Normandy. The first objective was to reach the 38th parallel, where the war began, to reclaim South Korea's old borders. South Korean divisions led the charge, reaching the parallel on October 1st. They kept moving right into North Korea. A week later, American forces were perched at the parallel, anxiously waiting for orders to follow suit. But back in Washington, tough choices had to be made. Should the United Nations continue the drive into North Korean soil? Would this overstep the mandate of a police action? There were no easy answers. U.S. commanders heard rumors that Communist China was moving large numbers of troops north into Manchuria. The Chinese resented American intervention in the region and feared that hostilities would spill over into their Manchurian territory. Intelligence reports estimated that up to 450,000 Chinese troops were lurking in the hills beyond the Yalu River, poised to strike. But these warning signs were cast aside by Americans, thirsting for an unconditional victory. After the world wars, anything less would be a disappointment. Korea didn't affect the everyday lives of most Americans as previous wars had. 1950s America was a pleasant, peaceful place where there was a car in every garage and a drive-in diner in every town. Stories of the triumphs in Korea were an exciting diversion from the humdrum every day. And as the Eighth Army marched heroically onto North Korean soil, a bored, communist-hating populace watched with attentive glee. As the fighting moved north, the citizens of South Korea tried to resume their daily lives. Weddings, funerals, and the daily market went on as they had before the war. As they recovered from the destruction of the previous 4 months, they waited anxiously for their leader, Syngman Rhee, to deliver on his long-held promise to unite the peninsula. After centuries of subjugation, the Korean people were anxious to control their own destiny. Whether at the mercy of the Mongols, Chinese, Manchus, Russians, or Japanese, South Koreans were always in the shadow, and often under the command of foreign invaders. They were most influenced by the Chinese, who ruled the peninsula on and off for more than 1,000 years. The cultures of the two countries, each centered around Buddhism and agriculture, were closely linked. But the politics of the two were worlds apart in 1950. South Koreans rejected the Chinese communism that threatened to devour their homeland. Within weeks, their sons would meet their nemesis head-on in the hills of North Korea. There, the front was opening up. The road to Pyongyang, the North Korean capital, was free and clear, and UN battalions raced each other to it. The North Koreans tried to establish a thin defensive line around their capital, but they couldn't curtail the UN momentum. The Eighth Army found itself at the gates of Pyongyang within 10 days of crossing the parallel. Looking at the open road ahead, the men couldn't help being optimistic.
General MacArthur announced that we would be home by Thanksgiving. We believed him. Life seemed good in Pyongyang. Morale was sky high. James Cardinal, Private First Class.
The Eighth Army set out north and west from Pyongyang, eager to vanquish the northern regime. As they crossed the Changchon River, the last major land barrier in North Korea, they could smell victory waiting for them on the other side. But what they found was a mass grave holding over 100 executed American prisoners. The North Koreans were turning even more savage in their desperation. UN resolve was renewed. On October 24th, General MacArthur ordered his men to march straight to the Yalu River. Now he would let nothing stand in the way of total victory. But just over the horizon, squatting silently in the hills, were hundreds of thousands of Chinese soldiers.